Hello there, guys, and welcome back to your favorite part of Corn Hub, the weekly recap, where we review the top videos every week. First and foremost, he's just got an out of 50 Shades of Grey. We have the Corn Hub commissioner himself, Mama Jolt.
What's going on, guys?
And secondly, we have the man in the mirror. He once was white, but now he's not. TurboBlaze.
Yo, back again for week 2, or second week in a row.
And as always, I'm the greatest analyst of all time, and it's hard for me not to remind you guys. So, as always, we're going to try to keep this to under 30 minutes, which is like world record Usain Bolt speed. So first and foremost, we're going to look at the games from the majors, and as Jolt edits the spread, and then after that, we're going to look at a few things that have come up. So potentially talk about a few little changes. Also, our minors has just started, and I strongly encourage you guys to check out the minors. They are pretty much the future of the NPL at some stage. Not because they're younger or anything, but not everyone wants to stay. And there's a few guys that will leave at the end of the season, and these guys have massive gorillas on their shoulders, really, just to come back. And there's a lot of pressure going into majors, and check them out. It makes them a lot easier. So, as always, we're going to start off with the weekly recap. And Jolt, why don't you talk about the Battle of the Admins? I heard the winner of this game was going to become Miners Commissioner. Tell us how it went down.
Okay. Well, this was definitely an interesting game. So this was Togavor against Trev the King, and it was a pretty interesting matchup too, as Trev brought a banded Celesteela, which puts in so much work against Togavor's team. I think it 2-hit KOs or OKOs the entire roster. And that's saying something, considering how fat Togavor's team is, with things like Bronzong, Mega Venusaur. Obviously, Clefable doesn't appreciate banded heavy slams, and he also has stuff like Seismitoad. So he's got a lot of stuff that could switch into it, and that was just a really cool bring that Trev had on his team this week, as well as, I believe, having Hazard Stack with spikes on the Acelgor, and I imagine Toxic Spikes on the Dragalge. I'm not positive on that, but I think that's the case. And then, of course, I banded Zygarde as well, putting in a lot of work. While Chris had some stuff that was also pretty scary. I believe the Venusaur was more or less pretty standard. I believe the Thunderous Tea was the bigger threat. If I remember correctly, it was a setup threat. I think it was an agility set. I probably should have looked at what the actual sets were before I started talking about it. But even so, I know it was a very, very close game. It came down to, in my opinion, one little piece of hacks relatively early in the game, where Mega Venusaur missed a Leech Seed on what I believe was one of Trev's fatter mons, and it ended up forcing Chris to make some aggressive plays later in the game that put him in a bad position. So that's kind of the brief recap on what happened in the game, but it did end up being a very nice win for Trev, a very much needed win for Trev, as with that win he was able to move back to a 500 record, which is honestly very, very good in a league this hard. So props to Trev for the win. Would like to see a little less hacks in the next one, but still pretty cool to watch.
Let's hope Togue doesn't get hacked again. He's been hacked the last 2 weeks. I think he couldn't take him that third week in a row. And I'm going to take the next one. We're not going to discuss these games because we've got some more discussion points later on. I'm going to take the Carney Hobo v. the Dwebbles. And let's just say someone took to the carnival and they lost this week. They were out of tokens, and that was Cloud. Cloud brought a really interesting team, but he made so many aggressive plays towards the end of the game that were just unnecessary. Like, he could have clicked Mock Punch on the Diggers, but he goes for close combat trying to predict. There's so many little things in this game that just go wrong for Cloud because of his aggressive plays. And although it seems a bit tedious and unnecessary, he wanted to make those aggressive plays, and that's what really cost him the match. A really good prep from both sides. The Z-move Gyarados, it looked like at one stage it could have swept, but it was just a game that could come down to anything. And next up, we have Turbo on the Blake v. Seb game, which was probably arguably one of the better games of the week.
Yeah, Seb always coming up with a game of the week, as we can see. Blake versus Seb was a very, very evenly matched game, with both teams bringing some very, very nice prep, but the game was lost in the prep, as Blake failed to bring any fire coverage on his Salamence, which he was aimed for his sweeper in the game, meaning that Seb cleverly saving his Mega Sizzle till the end game, thinking he'd do some work, and also bring a more defensive set, allowed him to set up and then win the game because Blake couldn't break it with just an Earthquake. I think that's where the game was lost this week, in the fact it was completely lost in his prep, as Merc will tell you the game is 80% prep and 20% play. So that's that game for this week.
But then again, just like yin and yang, with hacksless games, we have Mama Jolt, another one of his employees has asserted dominance over him in him v Abe. Jolt, what went wrong?
Okay, well, this matchup was kind of interesting as well, as Abe's team, as many of you are probably aware at this point, is very hyper-offensive, and from my perspective, I felt that it was the safest option to just take a hyper-offensive approach myself in combating that, as if I were to bring more of a defensive team, it increases the risks of getting critical hit by things like a Kartana spamming Leaf Blade, which has a high critical hit ratio, as well as the Circuitry, which is a huge threat once it gets any sort of setup opportunities. So I decided to run hyper offense against him, and that made it hyper offense versus hyper offense, meaning that the game has a ton of 50-50s involved. And that's basically what ended up coming down to, or at least it would have, if it weren't for a late game crit with the Kyurem versus the Azumarill, essentially removing the chance of 2 additional 50-50s to close out the game. So it was definitely a really tight game. I think maybe I made a misplay with not rock polishing with Metagross in the middle of the game, where I would have been able to claim a kill or weaken the Darm, but still a very, very good game overall. Ended in a 1-0 score, so can't really complain about suffering much of a differential loss, but still a fun game to be part of, despite the fact that I kind of hate Kyurem now. But that's all I've got.
And next up we have, I'll be taking over Razor v Crobat for the win. 2 very prestigious TTM members taking on one another in a bloodbath for the approval of Styx, our lord and host. A very interesting team, and the battle of the terrains. It's a bit like when Styx says TCG Go. If you don't draw the right cards, you sort of can't set it up. You know, someone's played a Parallel City, you got nothing for them. And that's what I went this week. Unfortunately for Razor, a bit of a choke at the end, not switching back into his Coco to remove the Psychic Terrain and allowed Mega Alakazam to get the sweep. Danza has pretty much shown the reason why Tapu Lele should be banned. Although it was allowed this season for meme appeal, it is an absolute monster in setting up win cons because it stops Psychic, Psychic Terrain obviously boosts Psychic moves and blocks priority for something like Mega Alakazam is not that common in League format. It really gives that the much needed boost that it needs. Turbo, what was the next game?
I mean, the next game we're going to jump into is Shardy versus Rizzy Powell. Now, if you want to see Shardy use absolutely spicy memes, I suggest you check this team out, because Rizzy Powell had the matchup all day, every day, and he also looked like he had the game until Bayern Munich used one of his favorite tactics in Tailglow Manaphy to win the game in the end game. Tyrantrum picked up 2 kills this game, so if you want to see a slightly unviable Dragon type look viable, check this game out. But yeah, this game came down to Shardy using Manaphy perfectly in the end game, being one of the best mons in League format ever, and literally clicking Tailglow and sweeping the rest of Riz's team. Also, Mega Kang is still slightly sucking, so that's kind of that right there.
And you mentioned about Manaphy being one of the best mons in League format. Also, this week we saw one of the up-and-coming mons being Magina. And what do you think of that game of Magina versus San Francisco?
I mean, Magina this week did exactly what it did last week and cleaned the team again. Matty has cleaned 2 champions in 2 consecutive weeks, which is kind of ridiculous. Again, I said that Merc will tell you that the game is 80% prep and 20% gameplay, and Merc's prep just wasn't there this week. Failure to bring a Torkoal, as Matty explains very aptly in his video, alongside the mounds of sarcasm from both videos. Matty does explain that the Torkoal would have been a very, very good bring for Merc, but he just doesn't. I think that Merc recklessly sacking his only offensive check to Magina really, really solidified the fact this could be a 6-0. He could have done some damage limitation if he didn't do that, but unfortunately that was the case. Matty just absolutely used this monster in League format very, very well for the second week running. So that's really cool.
And then we have the most hyped match. This is like Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor. They're getting paid millions on the line to do what they love, bash one another with their hands, except instead of using their hands, they're going to use some Pokemon. And Zazo showed this week that he breeds his Pokemon because he has a really strong bond with them. And he really just served up a nice return to hearing that Gypsy King is a champion. As Gypsy said in his video, and I hope this time I will not misquote him, he really didn't have anything for normal spam, and it turned the game from a game that was sort of going to be, well, this could be a 50-50, to a game that Zazo really exploited a weakness in Gypsy's team and just destroyed it with momentum. However, in saying that, the man himself, Anthony Zazo, nearly choked on Donkey Dix at the end, going for the double-edged play. Although we are still sending our cryptic riders to the temples of Egypt to check stone tablets to see what the result would have been. We still don't know if the double-edged blade mattered. I know that there's a lot of talk about it, and I think the double-edged blade, the crit on Muck at the end did matter. As Gypsy does say, he was a curse set, and that's something that I think we really should look at. Unfortunately, though, you can't be the king forever, and the 2 losses back-to-back is something unprecedented for the man himself. But at the same time, the caliber of matches is incredible. So for this part of the weekly podcast this week, we're going to talk about 2 mons that we have seen in League format at the moment. One of them, which is banned by the GBA, being Necrozma, and secondly, Magiana, aka Use Comfy. So let's start off with Necrozma. So guys, what do you think of first and foremost the ban of Necrozma in the GBA?
I mean, go ahead.
Go on. Okay, so I think that they banned it purely because they didn't want to play against it. It is annoying in the wrong hands. If you give it to a stall player, I'm pretty sure they would really, really enjoy doing it, using it. I mean, it's a better Cresselia in a sense that it has offensive presence and better coverage and a better ability. So it's like Crest, but much, much better. The store power set is absolutely disgusting, but in the MPL, it hasn't been as effective as it could be. As you've seen, it started on Rizzy's team, but then was transferred because it just didn't fit synergistically. I think it's very, very in the user's hands for it to be successful or not successful in that case.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very good mon. I'm not convinced that it's ban worthy, and kind of like Turbo was saying, I feel like the GBA banned it just because they didn't want to deal with it. But that said, it's not something like Deoxys Defense, where you literally can't kill Deoxys Defense because it's fast, has taunt and recover, and can just lay all the hazards at once, essentially for free. And that's what I feel is potentially the comparison that people might try to draw to it, as it's a bulky Psyche type like that. But I feel like Necrozma is manageable because it doesn't have like Heal Bell or something like that allows it to get rid of statuses. It's easily, once it's toxic, it's easily worn down. I would say that the most threatening set for it is something along the lines of Weakness Policy to abuse its Prison Armor ability, which in combination with something like Rock Polish could actually be a pretty big threat, but that's also something that can be prepared for. So I feel like while in the right hands, while in good hands, Necrozma is a huge threat. I honestly don't see it as better than a round 2 pick. It might only be a round 3 pick within another couple seasons or so of experience in this generation. So I guess we'll see. I'm not the biggest fan of it personally, but I don't know.
I think Necrozma should be allowed, and the main reason I think Necrozma should be allowed is, although it is a bulkier and more offensive Cresselia, it still does have some of the similar flaws to Cresselia. Yes, it does have its Prison Armor ability to reduce the super effective hits, but I really don't think the move pool's like its move pool makes it so hard. It's like Manaphy. It's a 5-slot syndrome type, 4-move slot syndrome, as we like to refer to it as over here. And you saw in the Clover v Asta J game, the way that Clover got rid of Necrozma was through a crit with Raikou. I think the other thing that makes Necrozma a bit harder to deal with is, unlike Cresselia, it can also set up hazards. And the reason what makes that harder to deal with is it's residual chip damage. It can switch in, take a super effective hit, switch back out. Take a super effective hit, switch back out. But at the same time, there are abilities such as Mold Breaker. I know Mega Gyarados has it, and that, obliterates it. But, at the same time, we do see a lot of very, very strong mons in the format currently running around. For example, Tapu Bulu, which I think should not be suspected, but definitely a little bit more research done on it. Because Tapu Bulu, hits everything really hard with a Woodhammer. So I think there's a lot of checks in place, but a lot of people don't see the checks so straightforward.
Joel makes an interesting point about how Necrozma could fall down in ranking in a draft order, or in terms of what round should be picked, as we get more used to the Gen 7 format. I think there's another mon that shows if you watch the Skyrander game, the Minus game that Skyrander uploaded, Tapu Koko is shown to be not amazing, and as amazing as everyone thought it would be in the draft format, especially running a special set. It basically dropped to a golem and couldn't even do over 50% with an HPI on a not even very invested split of golem. Golem, no. Sorry, my bad.
Oh, gosh, Turbo. We as analysts have a job to make sure we don't do mistakes.
I mean, yeah, I don't want to be misquoting.
The thing on top of Coco, though, like it's its speed tier that's going to make it useful. Speed is so important in draft format, speed control in general. And even if it's not the most powerful attacker in the world, it's still a threat because of its speed tier and Thunderbolt boosted by electric terrain. It's not something to let slip your mind whenever you're prepping, or you will lose to it. So it may not be broken by any means, but I think it's still a solid round 3 pick, maybe round 2 pick for someone who really wants
I agree.
good
I
speed.
certainly agree. It's definitely not a top 5 pick though. That I've seen it go into the drafts.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, definitely not.
That's new gen hype though.
I don't know how Tapu Koko goes first 5 and Kieran Black's going like 12th in every league. I'm like, huh?
Yeah, it's true. That is so true.
Kieran Black's just hard to fit on a team because of its typing. That's.
But at the same time though, Kieran Black can be considered ban-worthy because of the abuse and brokenness of Z moves.
Yeah.
But
if you build a team around that, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a topic for another day, though. But I want to focus on now Magearna, because Magearna has 2 very different things. I think the issue with Magearna at the moment is not so much Magearna the mod itself. I just don't think we'll ever see Magearna played as well as Matty Brolic is using it. He's a known person of making stupid... No, I don't want to say stupid. I want to say unknown gods like comfy work. You know, I don't want to be misquoting.
You said stupid god. He's going to get you. He's going to get you.
No, don't. It will never be in the podcast. It'll be edited out. No way. Real. It's not really so stupid. It's more so... No, another point for that. And Magearna really suits his playstyle. Run offensive, run defensive. And the way he runs it defensive is... He's running Carmine Dazzling Gleam. It's something that a lot of us skip in our head. We're like, oh, Magearna's not broken. He has to run Flow Cannon. And whereas Matty's like, nah, I'm just using Dazzling Gleam. I think the ability to Soul Heart make is what breaks Magearna. You know, we saw that 1 kill and bang, it's a +2, +3 because of its Carmine boost. And the other thing that makes it so broken is that mons that die to hazards on impact. So if you decide to sack something to Magearna, you give it a free +1 boost. And that's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah, it's not just its offensive though. It's that defensive typing. Like, yeah, of course, Soul Heart is what makes it so ridiculously good. But when you combine that with the typing that only has 2 weaknesses and the bulk to not be OHKO'd by anything that's unboosted, that's kind of ridiculous, honestly. And in the hands of someone like Matty Brolic, who is quite possible, I don't want to say this definitively, but he is one of the best in the world at using Trick Room sets. That just makes Magearna all the more scary in his hands. And is it too broken for draft format? That's still debatable, but it's definitely in the question, in my opinion. It's something that probably should be suspect tested further, or at least have a strong discussion over whether or not it should be banned in the NPL and other leagues, honestly, as well. So it'll be interesting to see how much longer it sticks around, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
I mean, we're all just looking past the amazing love story that is Matty Brolic and Magearna. Matty Brolic picked up a team that he himself says he wasn't comfortable with any of the ones that he had. He'd never used them before. And wait, what? 2-6-0s with a Magearna in 2 weeks? Excuse me? Like, it's a match made in heaven. Like,
yeah.
He's picked up a mon that he is like using better than anyone I've seen use. As much as how good it is I've seen across leagues, Matty is using it amazingly well, and I think that a lot of it is the reaction that, oh my god, it's Magearna, it's this new mon that's amazingly broken with a stupid ability. But I think that Matty, I think you have to take into account that how well Matty is using it.
Yeah,
he's making the plays at the right times, like the Trick Room plays. He could have lost it a couple of times in each of the games that he got 6-0'd, but he made the right plays to stop that from happening. So I think we have to give him a lot of credit for that, and I don't think we should just focus on the mon itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree entirely. Matty has been playing it perfectly. I don't think he's made any mistakes with Magearna since he's had it, and that just emphasizes how big of a threat Magearna really is whenever you see the results of someone using it correctly. So it's a crazy mon. Matty's been playing spectacularly, though.
Let's have a quick look at the minors just to finish off for this week, because we don't want to neglect our, the young ones. We had some great results this week. We had Magic 2-0, the Anaheim and Tigers. We really encourage you guys to check these guys out. As always, our job as analysts isn't to tell you what the coaches were thinking. We may use that to formulate our opinion, but first and foremost, we want to give you our take on the game. We then had Colorado 4-0ing Toronto, and it was probably one of the upsets of the week. Montreal 3 beat the Temple 0. Gotham City Golurks upsetting the Skyrander 4-0. Tampa Bay Lux Bays beating Uzi in the rematch 2-0. The Tampa Bay Frog Gadiers won 2-0 against Portland. We had the main Red Colitzers win 4-0 against Fries. And we had our boy Danky 5-0 in ASR. I thought that this week we saw a pretty cool set from Magic, and that was the way he used Lando and Sand. I think what makes his team so broken to an extent is not so much that he just has Kang. It's he's got Kang and Lando Eye, and Lando Eye is one of the best mons to run mixed. And even though it's Sandforce, with Gigalith is going to make it such a hard mon to counter. I also thought that the Gotham game v Skyrander I thought was going to be a lot closer. I know that Rob in his commentary says it a lot that he doesn't know how much effort Sky put in compared to himself. I'm not going to question that because it's not my place to say, but I thought that game would have definitely been closer given the player Skyrander is. And probably the other one was we saw Mono finally click Protect against the Bullet Punch Club, and he did win. Finally, he's learnt. He can now win the GBA, that he's learned that important lesson of clicking Protect.
You make a fun point there of the team with the Lando Eye plus Sandforce plus Mega Kang. I want to see that versus Dan's team. What's better, Lando Eye and Sand and Mega Kang, or Sand and Tapu Lele? What do you think's better? That could be an interesting game if they ever did that.
What do you mean, Tapu Lele?
I just see a bunch of Tapu Lele fodder, to be honest.
Yeah, I was say Tapu Lele. Well, it's not so much that, but you remember that Magic I don't think has extra drill, whereas Dancer does. So
Magic does have, doesn't he?
I don't think
He's
so.
ran air balloon, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, he does. Yeah, he does. Sorry.
Better pay attention.
I don't make mistakes. Simple errors.
But,
Yeah,
I mean,
but
strongly encourage watching the minors games. They're very good this week, and they'll be on the. I'll be talking about them with my Power Rankings co-host later on in the week. So make sure you check that out as well.
it's Richard, isn't it? Was it Richard?
Richard.
That'll be coming,
So,
I believe, on Wednesday.
So let's just review what our schedule is going to be like. Wednesday we will have Power Rankings for the minors, hosted by TurboBlaze, your lovely TurboBlaze, and also hosted by Richard. And then Friday we may be starting to do a playoff picture, and that will probably be me and Verd looking at what the playoff system is going to be like. Who is going to win the championship? Obviously, because Jolt's here, we're going to say Jolt. And then
I gotta make playoffs first.
Jolt, if you don't tell them you can't make playoffs, they won't know you can't make playoffs.
I didn't say I can't make playoffs. I said I gotta make playoffs. I will. Don't worry. You can count on it.
If you check the sheet, he already thinks he's made playoffs.
Hey, it's fixed, okay?
And then, okay, so that'll be like the playoff picture type series. And then Saturday we try to have Power Rankings for majors. And Sunday is sometimes weekly podcasts. They interchange because our analysts are really lazy, especially that Flying Bird weeaboo kid. He does nothing all week. It's just a pain to see. And when he does, all he does is make errors in the video. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this shorter weekly recap hosted on Cornhub, your favourite place to visit and watch videos without your mum's permission. Don't advise you tell your parents what Cornhub actually is. It's lots of corn. It's not for children. Please not. And until next time, thanks Turbo. And thanks, Jolt, as always, for joining us. Until next time, peace.
Peace.
Bye.
Goodbye. Alright, just send me that.